wanted 100% of the rare earth minerals from Ukraine. That was obviously rejected by the Ukrainians, and that's what led to a great deal of anger between the two sides. But there were still negotiations going on. What appears to have been agreed is that the United States will get 50% after Ukraine takes out $500 billion to try and improve the economy. In some of the drafts that are circulating, and there are various drafts that are, one of the key sentences keeps repeating, which is the US government intends to provide long-term financial commitment to develop a stable and economically prosperous Ukraine, which suggests that whatever happens, this is tying the US into the Ukraine for a significant period of time. What appears to be missing are any security guarantees. This is all financial. This is what they're talking about. And the reason the US wants to do a deal like this, first of all, Donald Trump believes that the US is owed somewhere in the region of $350 billion for the money that's been provided to help Ukraine fight this war. Even the US government's own Ukraine monitoring group says it's much closer to $150, $160 billion. Vladimir Zelensky says they were grants, not loans, so they're under no obligation to pay money back. But perhaps more importantly from the US, 5% of the world's rare earth minerals are in Ukraine. We're talking about graphite, and we're also talking about lithium. Very important in the modern economy. And of course, that would help take China out of the supply chain, something that Donald Trump has been keen to do. But we should, of course, wrap all this up by saying this is all speculation at the moment. There is no firm confirmation from either side that this deal has been done, although it appears both sides are inching closer.
I've read Marx, I've read Engels, I've read Das Kapital.
The world is run by Trotskyists.
Hardcore Trotskyists.
How great an anti-American Marxist.
They're controlled by Trotskyists, as you put it, and these are the most evil, sick human
this
beings on the face
is a very good article from Michael Roberts, a Marxist economist, and I've just sort of kind of summarizing here. So this week sees the war in Ukraine enter its fourth year. Honestly, I didn't believe it would come this far. Neither side really willing to back down. So in this episode, it's time to take stock of where the economies of the various players are at and what this might mean for 2025. The losses on both sides are staggering, with the economy of Ukraine being particularly hard hit. And so this is Michael Roberts. The blog is called The Next Recession. So estimates put the number of Ukrainian civilian and military casualties, which is deaths plus injuries, at 46,000 civilians and possibly as high as 500,000 soldiers. Russia military casualties, they estimate, are about the same. So an assessment back in 2024 reported by the Wall Street Journal estimated 80,000 Ukrainian troops killed, 400,000 wounded. Government figures in the first half of 2024 showed 3 times as many people died in Ukraine as were born. In the last year of the war, Ukrainian losses have been 5 times higher than Russia's, with Kiev losing 50,000 service personnel every month. Ukraine's GDP is down 25%, and 7.1 million Ukrainians now live in poverty. So while Ukraine saw some modest economic recovery in the past year, Ukraine lacks able-bodied people to produce or go to war. Unemployment is at 16.8% as of January. The shortage of workers is attributed to the war effort or those who fled the country. It's so dire, there's been talk of mobilizing 18 to 25-year-olds who are currently exempt. And Ukraine relies on $40 billion a year just to keep its government functioning and to maintain production. The EU provides civil funding, while the US provides military funding, which is a pure division of labor. The World Bank and IMF have offered loans to help Ukraine, but they need to show that it can pay them back. If the US cuts off their aid, which are largely loans, let's be real, then the IMF can't help them either. So if the war ends this year, what will happen to Ukraine's economy? According to rough estimates from the World Bank, Ukraine needs $486 billion over the next 10 years to recover, or 3 times its current GDP. Damages from the war reach $152 billion. 2 million housing units, or 10% of the total housing stock in Ukraine, are damaged or destroyed, as well as 5,200 miles of roads, 300 bridges. Nearly 6 million Ukrainians are displaced outside the country, with internal displacement is at around 3.7 million. So whatever is left of Ukraine's resources have been sold off or annexed by Russia. 28% of Ukraine's arable land is owned by a mixture of oligarchs, European and American corporations, and Saudi Arabia. Nestle is investing $46 million in the Western region.
Oh, friend of the show, Nestle. That's
friend
good.
of the
All
show.
right.
Yeah. We love Nestle. We're sponsored by Nestle.
Yeah, they're great with water.
Yeah. Oh God, I hate Nestle so much. They are when we talk about like
after the revolution, there'll be some chats with the leadership of Nestle, not the workers, but
there's corporations that exist to like just simply make money and extract resources, and then there's Nestle, which are just so evil on a level that's inconceivable.
Yep.
So Nestle's investing, quote air quotes investing, more like probably extracting. While drug, pesticide, and seed giant Bayer is investing 60 million euros in corn seed production. One massive poultry conglomerate is getting money lended to them from the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, employing 28,000 people. It controls 360,000 hectares of land, which is an area bigger than Luxembourg. So, of course, the Ukrainian government is committed to a free market approach for the post-war economy, which includes labor deregulation, sweatshop working conditions, massive corporate income tax cuts, and full privatization of all remaining state assets. The aim of the West
all the socialist and communist parties going to stand against this, right?
No,
can't they speak out in Ukraine?
No, they're all banned and tortured and forced underground.
Wow! Oh my goodness! But they're a Wait, Aaron, but they're a democracy.
No, it's a democracy and it's a free country. That's why Zelensky canceled elections. Yeah. So the aim of the West is to restore the Ukrainian economy as a form of like a special economic zone. Public money will cover the losses for private capital. Ukraine will be cleansed of trade unions, tax regimes, and regulations, and any of the major obstacles to profitable investments by Western capital. An alliance with Ukrainian oligarchs.
Did like the Azov Battalion take power? I'm sorry. Is the Azov Battalion running the trade union shit eliminated? Reminds me of Germany in the 30s. I don't know. And I thought of the Azov Battalion, but all right, I'll just what the fuck?
They're making money by putting javelins up on Craigslist.
Well, how you gonna get a terrorist economy started, Aaron? Come on, you really got to think outside the box. Jesus.
So, assuming everything goes well, restoring infrastructure is estimated to cost about $1 trillion to fix Ukraine. So
Jesus.
It's fine. They're in good shape.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's pretty grim for Ukraine. They are completely if nothing changes, they are completely beholden to the West. They are complete puppets. And this is what we talk about when there is no real democracy. There's no like NATO is not a friend of Ukraine because NATO has been using Ukraine as pawns and just cannon fodder in hopes that essentially Russia just runs out of bullets. So how's Russia doing, right?
The sanctions must have. Okay, hold on. I'm a liberal. The Russian Federation is about to break up. That guy Prigozhin, I heard of him. I think he launched a coup. He's going to take Putin out of power pretty well, right? Because he has the Wagner group. I don't know. I'm sure. Look, Russia's on its. They're going to turn the ruble into rubble. That's what President Brendan said. So look out. The days are numbered for the Russian regime, which just sucks, by the way. Like, we're not the American quote unquote communist party. We're not like, weird ass internet. Like, even Stalinists that I know aren't this bad. So the weirds on the internet who like, oh, Russia's going to bring back socialism shit under Putin. It's not. It's not. But like, Tankies is even like, my God. So no, Russia's not the good guys. Okay. Just because they blew up some Azov Battalion people, which is cool. No, it's not. But all right, let's see how terrible Russia's been hit by our crippling sanctions.
So we are the juggernaut. Sleep over the Azov Battalion getting killed. But so obviously, there's the sanctions must be working, right?
Yeah, right.
That's all. That's all we do.
So historically, for years, of course, they're working. They're losing the war.
Those of you know,
Devin, hold on, wait, Devin, quick check. Russia's losing. Is the rubble? Two questions. Is the ruble going to rubble? And is Russia losing?
No and no.
Okay, thank you for that. Shit. All right. All right. Let's see what else you got. Devin, you have to be an expert. You have to back us up. I'm not gonna get an MSNBC with that attitude. Okay. I'm trying to get a paid gig job. I can't keep doing this. But go on, Aaron. Let's hear it out.
So those of you who know your history, Russia is very bad at starting wars, but they're very, very good at finishing them. The economy in this war has been boosted with GDP growth up 3.6% in 2023 and 3% in 2024. They managed against sanctions while investing a third of their budget in defense spending. The price caps imposed by the West on oil and gas just pushed Russia eastward towards China, who bought their exports. Well, gee, who saw that coming?
Whoa, my goodness.
Trade
India
between
did too. So yeah, there's them.
Trade between Russia and China reached 240 billion in 2023, a 64% increase since 2021 before the war. So the war has intensified a minor labor shortage, which means workers' wages are on the upward because scarcity breeds value. So while Russia enlists working age men, the private sector is hesitant to let them go, resulting in job security. Wages are up by double digits. Poverty and unemployment are at record lows. The government has increased spending on social support for families, pension increases, mortgage subsidies, and compensation for relatives of soldiers serving. On the other hand, inflation has spiked, tanking the ruble, forcing interest to go up 20%. So the ruble did actually take a hit.
Aha!
Got him. Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
Yep.
This war should end any day now.
Yep.
So on the other hand, I read that Western companies' withdrawal from Russian markets has forced the Russian state to intervene in the decision-making of the capitalist sector. They've taken over foreign entities and resold them to Russian capitalists committed to the war effort. Spending on construction and equipment is up 134 billion. Investment is geared towards mechanical engineering, metalworking for weapons, computers, optics, electronics, and eastward infrastructure. Western economists are forecasting a collapse of the Russian economy due to sanctions and labor shortage, but so far there's no sign of one coming. Spending on the war has actually been fairly modest. The Kremlin has barely had to borrow money to fund the war. Tax revenues from domestic activity are up since the war began, so Russia is capable of financing its own war. Russia oil and gas revenues are up by 26%, with exports reaching record highs of 33.6 million tons of natural gas in spite of the sanctions. So Michael Roberts warns that none of this is sustainable in the long term. Eventually, the war will end and Russia will revert to a capitalist accumulation. The Russian economy is fundamentally natural resource linked, relying on extraction rather than manufacturing. So a war economy is unproductive in the long run. Russia depends on high-tech imports. It cannot produce competitive technologies for export other than arms and nuclear technology. So where does this leave us in regards to what does peace look like? Is there peace on the horizon? So Trump is basically discarded Ukraine and is directly dealing with Putin, further solidifying the fact that this was always a proxy war between Russia and the West, with Ukrainians used as cannon fodder for NATO's aims in the region. Zelensky will not support any peace deal that means the loss of territory and a veto on NATO membership. European leaders have declared they will continue to finance and militarily support the war. So now Trump wants his money back, despite the fact that 70% of the aid was actually spent domestically in the United States, lining the pockets of arms manufacturers.
Wait. Are you saying America funded a war just to make a profit? What?
Yes, that's right.
Oh, God.
Hey,
okay.
You know what, though? Think of all the workers at those factories that got paid.
That's true.
You're
All
welcome.
those cluster bombs that are going to be go around long after the war, blowing up some kid's leg off in eastern Donetsk. Just remember, made in the USA, baby. All right.
So now Trump is eyeing 50% of Ukraine's mineral rights in exchange for the $500 billion needed for post-war reconstruction. The problem is half of Ukraine's deposits are on Russian-controlled territory.
Yeah,
so
I was
good luck getting
gonna
those
bring that
back.
up. Yep.
So as Lenin taught us in his masterpiece on imperialism, when there is nothing left to conquer, we see nothing but the division and redivision of the world under capitalism, which inevitably breeds war and further division of the spoils. British capital is looking for opportunity, as is BlackRock in Ukraine. Don't we love BlackRock? One of the
friend of the show, BlackRock, the United States' biggest landlord we can get. And one thing, I'm not a Maoist, but I'm just saying Mao had some ways to deal with landlords. I'm just saying. Options, that's it.
Luigi Mao Gioni is all I'm saying.
Whoa, hey, oh my God, that should be our next podcast episode. All right, that's good. All right, perfect.
Europe got hit hard with the drying up of cheap energy imports from Russia, making production far more expensive. But European leaders want to continue the war, calling for increased defense spending at the expense of social programs to defend themselves against westward expansion of Russia.
Yeah, so I just want to pick on that too. That's a good point you brought up about energy costs. Like here in I don't know Canada for you in Canada, Aaron, but us in Massachusetts, we're getting killed with natural gas prices. They are through the roof right now. Obviously, one factor is very cold and the supplies are low. But like the supplies are low because of the war. That plays a factor on the supply side of it. And a lot of the capitalists didn't want to produce more natural gas because it wasn't profitable to do it when it was really cheap. So they created this now, and now they're making record profits and charging. In some places, it's gone up 40 to 60% in here in Massachusetts. But England at one point was like 150%. It was insane what Europe was charging for this proxy war and how bad it hit. But yeah, that's because people forget big natural gas pipeline was blown up, the Nord Stream pipeline. Devin, I know you have some theories or ideas on the Nord Stream pipeline, but like that was Devin. Who do you think did it? What's your take on the Nord Stream pipeline? Because I know we have talked about it in the past.
Well, wasn't it Victoria Nuland who shortly after the pipeline explosion got off the phone and turned to one of her aides and said, it's done?
Yep, right. I mean, why would Russia blow up its own pipeline kind of thing of like, isn't that bad for them?
The gas was coming from Russia into Europe. So if they wanted to stop the transfer of gas, they could have just turned the taps off.
Right, yeah.
I mean, and then also you have Joe Biden's various allusions to we have ways of stopping that regarding the pipeline.
Right.
I don't know, Devin. Doesn't Russia also have a history of false flags, like in Chechnya? Maybe they did it. Maybe they did it to themselves.
Sure, maybe it was a Norwegian boat anchor. You know,
I'm being facetious.
Because I'm like Chechnya. I don't know. I know it was bad. Chechnya. Don't throw Chechnya at me. That's a curveball. Jeff, do you know anything about Chechnya? By the way, are you an expert on this?
I've been wondering whatever happened to the whole Chechnya thing. So no, I'm no expert.
Right? Okay. No one else. I know. You throw Chechnya. Aaron, don't scare us. Okay. We have to pretend to be experts on every world event because we're internationalists. But Chechnya, I don't know. Yeah, bad, right? Just bad stuff happened. I know that much, but all right. Anyway.
Oh, wait a minute. Chechnya factored into sending mercenaries somewhere recently. Please fill in the blanks there.
Azerbaijan, maybe, or Tajikistan.
No, something more well known. Chechen mercenaries all of a sudden were popping up. Sorry, I can't remember where.
Might
but that
be
was
Africa.
Kind of strange.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. Aaron, you've derailed this whole thing by your Chechnya reference. I want you. We're gonna have a self-criticism session.
No, I'm more
after
interested in the history of false flags because the South Korean president got caught recently trying to stage a false flag of a fake North Korean attack. They were purchasing North Korean uniforms, and they're gonna stage an attack because he's facing severe unpopularity at home right now, and he tried to do a coup. All this wonderful, so-called democracy, free market, occupied Korea, as we sometimes call it.
Yep. I had a right winger in my place, a big MAGA chud was like saying the same thing to me, like, yeah, they were doing that. I'm like, you're an idiot. That's all right. They were just sneaking in there and okay. So all right, Aaron, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I like this is a good article, by the way. I do like this. So
it's fantastic.
Yeah, it's a good article.
Yeah. Yep.
Whatever the outcome of the negotiations between these imperialist powers, the specter of global war ever haunts us. The Democrats stand by and do nothing as Trump plunders the U.S. governing and administrative apparatus, but hue and cry over his wanting to end the war in Ukraine. They know a defeated Ukraine will deal a disastrous blow to the global standing and economic dominance of U.S. imperialism and even the U.S. dollar itself. And all this is a prelude to further global conflict and proxy wars and imperialist violence. And this is something we'll see this in the coming decade take place in America's former colonies around the world as they continue to encircle and encroach on China's international interests. Capitalism could very well put us on the brink of a third world war. So Trump made contact with Putin earlier this week and made a very nice, very perfect phone call, waxing poetic about their allyship during World War II, something Canadian government ignores and forgets that, when we gave a standing ovation to an SS Nazi not too long ago for his role in fighting against Russia in World War II.
How did
I will forever dunk on my government for fucking that up so hard.
Like, what country was fighting Russia in World War II? Did anybody was there a speechwriter for this? Like, when he's like writing this out, like, and this man fought against the Russians and wait a minute. Wait, who did he fight for? Where? The not like the Wehrmacht, which is bad enough. The SS. The worst, like, you have to swear allegiance to Hitler kind of like Nazi. Like, it's not like, oh, he got dragged, like he was conscripted into the German army, or they were gonna like execute his family, or was a prisoner of war and he was starving and they gave him a gun, or like, no, he went into the 17th fucking whatever Das Reich fucking thing, and that's insane. But holy mother of God, that was the worst thing I've seen lately. But yeah, I know. And a standing ovation. No one thought this was a bad idea, but thank you for that, Aaron. That was a really well done article. The other piece we have here that Aaron's got up on the screen about this was from the Revolutionary Communists of America. This came out on February 24th, and Trump ends the liberal world order. One piece here that I'll just take this paragraph, but I did like too, and I did kind of mention it, but it was this line. There couldn't be a starker contrast between how this war is actually ending and how the liberals had once dreamt it would end. It was supposed to finish with Russia crippled, even in the downfall of Putin and the breakup of the Russian Federation. Thoughts on that? Because I got thoughts, but
yeah, I've heard this too. They were banking on like a balkanization of Russia, essentially.
Right.
Like what a crazy you're talking about a country that inherited the bulk of the equipment from the collapse of the Soviet Union, and you think these guys are going to go down like without a fight with a few measly sanctions? Like that is wild to me.
Right. I think it worked. I mean, those kind of sanctions work in very poor countries, or second world, where they can be isolated. Like, the sanctions in Venezuela, they just crippled their oil industry. And that took out a huge chunk of Venezuela. Cuba is a very small island, resource poor nation of Cuba. Those sanctions, 60 years and they're still going on. And it's, they've been 60 years, but Russia's massive. It's a massive, heavily industrialized country that could, handle these. Yeah, there was a disruption on it, but like, as you just read that article, their economy's doing they're coming out stronger with a better army after this conflict. We're going on 3 years now? Yes, 3 years, right? 3 years we've been at war.
We're entering it's 3 whole years. We're entering our fourth year of this war.
Yep. So, yeah, it didn't happen. I mean, like I said, the thing about when the guy from the Wagner Group, Prigozhin, remember when he launched that, whatever that was, it was a coup, then it wasn't, then it was whatever, and I like when they point that article, like if I were like, good luck to Prigozhin trying to get a life insurance policy after that attempt, and then surely enough, they took him out, that's what what was he going to do? He just took his tanks and they thought that was going to be it. Like, oh, okay, all is forgiven. You're going to launch. They had nowhere to go. So nothing has happened. I don't think Russia has fair elections. I said it here first, folks. I said it here first, but they at least pretend to have elections, Ukraine. But yeah, that's just, I just thought that was a really telling piece in the article too. Like the Democrats thought this was going to be the end. Didn't happen. With the liberals thinking this was going to break up Russia, this was going to be the downfall of Putin. Did you think? do you think that?
I didn't think that would be an impossible scenario because war throws everything off, obviously. So. Right. And also, on Ukraine, I don't have a lot of insider information on more so on Russia. The left has been decimated in both countries, so the CWI doesn't have a lot of sources of information coming out of the country. Depends on where Kazakhstan may be and places like that. But when I was seeing stuff about an anti-war movement in Russia, I kind of believed it. They smashed it pretty quickly, but I think it existed. I was seeing corporate media reports, 2 years ago now, people wanting to get out of the country to avoid the draft. But yeah, once the war started to turn, which it's unclear to me if it decisively has, but it has somewhat, obviously, then that has a momentum to it, So that infamous press conference today with Trump yelling at Zelensky and all that was entertaining in a sick way, but it also does reflect some hard truth on the ground, right? obviously they're getting desperate. But at that point, I think there was a point earlier in the discussion, and I'll end on this for this thing, but this question, but so Trump and Putin supposedly have this sort of alliance now, the Trump regime and Putin regime, right? I think it's a little shaky. I don't quite believe the surface being presented, the picture being presented all the way. And I think that mineral grab is really important. That's classic imperialism. The fact that it hasn't quite gone through yet.
19th century classic imperialism.
The
Yeah.
fact that it hasn't quite gone through yet is interesting. It's a destabilizing factor in and of itself, you know. But you know, of course, a little part of me is like that. You get in bed with U.S. imperialism, what do you expect? You know what I mean? It's like that's going to come back to get you, and that's happening. But I think that you know, I would hesitate to make predictions about how solid the Putin regime is, how solid the Zelensky regime. I mean, Zelensky's already talked about resigning, you know. So because war is just really destabilizing. But I noticed in I think this article, I was skimming it a little bit while you had it up on the screen. The idea of the British sending in troops and so on. This is to even put that forward is shaky. But to imagine it happening on the ground is shakier. That's fraught with danger.
Yep.
And you know, I read a good article, by the way, in the Consortium News, and I don't remember what that is. I have a feeling it's kind of a little Stalinist or something, or post-Stalinist or whatever. But it was quite good recently with the history. And a lot of people have done work on that, Scott Ritter and others. And CWI has some stuff on that as well, socialistworld.net. And that I keep in mind, right, you know, when this stuff is happening in the moment. And I think, what's the trajectory here? It is isolate Russia through NATO encirclement. I don't think that's without potency, but then you have the sort of position of, you know, hey, wait a minute, China, Russia, Brazil, the BRICS, India, you know, that's going to be the countervailing power. That is also kind of classic imperialism working its way out, but that's also very precarious. It's very like not something easy to predict. So I kind of look at all this stuff and say, well, there's an entertainment value, a sick entertainment value on a certain level, but it's also extremely dangerous. And Trump was quoted today, you know, oh, you're playing with World War III. Now, I don't think Trump gives a crap that much, but I think the ruling class does. And but more importantly, you know, I mean, the short answer for this stuff is, you know, I think Marxists should be, and I'm not saying anyone disagrees with this, but Marxists should be on the side of the people in Ukraine and the people in Russia, and they're both getting screwed over so bad. And it's just so destabilizing. Even if the momentum's with Russia now, I just, you know, I'd hesitate to predict how the Putin regime is going to end up, even in the short term. You know,
I don't think there's any appetite in Europe to go to war with Russia and put boots on the ground. I think there'll be massive upheaval. We saw it over the years with both Italian dock workers, Greek dock workers, just refusing to ship arms and tanks to Ukraine because they understood the international solidarity side of this. It's like, okay, no, like our problem is NATO, who are stoking the flames of this conflict, you know, and that is our task in the West, is to oppose NATO, who's starting all these wars. And I think, considering there's also this rightward trend in political establishments across Europe right now too, and they could also be hesitant just because its wars are very expensive. They're very profitable, so there's that, but there is this like new kind of right wing coming out of the recession of isolationism, right? And even the right wing ruling class in Europe across a lot of the major countries might be very hesitant to, like, I could just easily just as well see them throw Ukraine under the bus and be like, okay, let's just divvy up Ukraine, East Ukraine, West Ukraine.
Well, you know,
the Donbass, like that's kind of where I see this going.
Well, you know, Massachusetts, for example, where I'm at, is and Chris and so on, is, you know, the so-called blue state. But you know, I really pay attention to protests, like left wing, right wing, you name it. The Ukrainian protests have been painfully small. The nationalistic protests with the flags and everything, and you know, I see Ukrainian flags on every 1,000th house or something like that. I mean,
there was a lot in the liberal cities for a while. They were everywhere.
The material, well, they're not anymore. I mean, my point, maybe I didn't say it. I said that.
Not so much nowadays.
It's just, you know, I would say that isolationism is somewhat popular right now, to put it simply. And there's a material basis for that. And, you know, the corporate media's tried so hard, and the Democrats are wringing their hands right now, very, very upset with Trump. But the pulse of the people here, I don't think it's a big stretch to say. That's one thing I will predict. They don't want to get involved with a war in Ukraine. Now, where Trump fails is, how about a war in Gaza? How about a war over here? They don't want that either. If you send U.S. troops into Greenland or Gaza, and Trump is his days are numbered. So it's odd, though, to have Trump kind of, you know, outflank the Democrats on the left with peace. when the word out of Trump's mouth is peace, you
Right.
know,
The,
what do
the
you do
right
with
has
that? You're
taken
just
the
like,
space of being anti-war, which is so weird. Like me growing up,
it's
it was George
horrible. It's
W. Bush and the
disgusting.
Iraq
Yeah.
War. They're
Yeah.
now the anti-war people. Victor
Yeah.
Orban, like all these people who were traditionally war hogs and wanted every imperialist war. Now,
Yeah.
obviously, that's not true because, like
For
you
the
said,
moment.
they want to go to war with China. They want to focus on China. China's going to be there.
Yeah.
They'll do that, and they funded that, and every Republican in Congress voted for the genocide in Gaza. So, but Trump wants to go to war with Mexico. He wants to go war like the Mexican cartels. He wants to go
Yeah.
war with Greenland, Panama. Like
Well,
so,
proxy wars are one thing. Proxy
right?
wars are one thing.
True.
I used to argue against the Vietnam syndrome. People would bring that up. Comrades would bring that up. That's the last thing I'd say. That's kind of over. I kind of have shifted on that. I think that does haunt them still, the bourgeois in this country.
Yeah.
And certainly people, I mean, Vietnam vets are very old now. But I have an older stepbrother who was in Vietnam. He's passed away, but I mean, the cliche was they come back from the war and they're all patriotic at a certain point, like later on when the revisionism kicked in. He never got that point. He never got patriotic about that war. He never bragged about being there. He never talked about being there mostly. And that's, I think if you talk to people even now about Iraq or something, all the PTSD stuff, Trump and company and the Democrats, because they love this shit too. If they go for boots on the ground anywhere, wow, that's going to be initially they can get away with it, but that's going to be a huge, huge destabilizing factor. And I would predict some of the bourgeois knows that. So they're comfortable with proxy wars, but when Trump starts talking about Gaza, Greenland, and everything else, they're very, very nervous. And of course, you got the wing of the Democrats, like I mentioned earlier, they're just livid right now over not supporting Ukraine. But where's their base on that? Where's the base of the Democratic Party bourgeois on direct intervention in Russia? They have no base. I'm sorry, Ukraine and Iraq and that region. No base for that. No, it doesn't exist.
Right. I think Afghanistan and Iraq. I mean, we lost Afghanistan. We lost in Iraq. There's that. That's over. Like, and some people, you have some revisionist Republicans who are like, Biden surrender. Biden, like this war that was going to happen no matter who was in charge. It's like Vietnam. Like when like the North was coming, when the communists were taking, it didn't matter who the U.S. president was. That was over, and they were coming. The Taliban, you saw how rapidly they were coming in around the election time. Biden was just like, we lost, and I'll give him, hey, at least he realized the reality. And I think Trump realized the reality that this war is unsustainable. They're not going to win. Like NATO could have sued for peace maybe in the first months, because at one point Russia, they made all those gains, then they lost them all early on. They could have sued for peace and ended it there, but no, they wanted to fight to the last Ukrainian. And I'm quoting this defense secretary, I can't think, Austin Lloyd, saying that. And no, the war kept going on, and that's it. And also, America is still going to send, as the article talks about, America is still going to be selling weapons to Ukraine because the military-industrial machine, they still need to make their profits. So they're going to keep arming them with American-made guns. And there's been some ideas in Europe that some Europeans, I think, like France, was like, maybe we'll build our own weapons, and like, good luck with that. That's not happening either. But like, no, Macron, that's not happening. It's like England. I think England said if they were going to send 30,000 soldiers, their entire standing army is 70,000, and most of them are officers. They do not have. They're going to put 50% of their entire military in the Ukraine, and that's, I think Keir Starmer said, only if America will be a backstop. Whatever. America's not putting any troops in there either. That's out. France wants to send troops, but like every time, all those divisions and battalions they were training in France, like they would train this one battalion in France to go fight with their equipment and go off and fight. And that division, I can't think of the name. That
it was
group,
the 155th, I think.
Yeah, that was the 155th. It's comical. They had 3,000 people at one point. They got to Ukraine. There was like 500 defected and left. And then they just took out and just split up all the troops and then now there's only like a few hundred, like maybe 800 left. They can't. Like, it's just this is over.
They literally stripped that battalion for parts,
right,
dividing it up, and moving the soldiers around to basically plug holes in the front lines in other battalions that were currently struggling.
Which seems like it goes against the entire idea of training as a
Why bother
battalion.
training them as a battalion then? Yeah. Exactly.
Right. Only to not do it. You know, like, I'm going to train you to be a doctor. So now here you go. The plumbing backed up in the house. Be a plumber. Well, that's not exactly what you trained us to do, was a big thing, but oh my God. So, all right. And let me get another quote here from the article too. Trump couldn't have been clearer about his policy. America first. American interests in Europe are small compared to other parts of the world, and yet here the Americans are. While the federal debt is at an all-time high, subsidizing European healthcare and benefit system by allowing them to piggyback off U.S. military might under NATO umbrella. And for what? This is Trump's thinking. European industry, European military security can go to the wall for all Trump cares. In fact, much better to cut a deal with Putin to boost gas and oil production, thus lowering energy prices and delivering on Trump's promises to bring down inflation. I thought that was an interesting point because, yeah, if that actually does happen, right now you have people, as I just said, we were talking about this earlier, natural gas prices are through the freaking roof here, you know, and everyone's mad at National Grid and you know, obviously they have to make a profit. So they're raising it to make a profit. They have CEOs who make millions of dollars. That's part of it. But that's what Trump's probably thinking. That's probably like, yeah, we want more natural oil and gas. So screw it. We're going to go back to it and they're just going to keep pumping up natural gas to us. So that was a very good point.
But, you know, my fact check this, but I believe the Trump administration regime or whatever, they just approved another big chunk of aid to Ukraine, you know, military aid. And then literally within 48 hours said, we may cut that off now because we had that fight with Zelensky. So there's a lot of contradictions there. I think that Trump will end up a pretty standard imperialist, you know, but it's hard to say where the fight will break out, where that will become most obvious, you know, because I agree with some of those points that, yeah, that's a very interesting point about natural gas prices, being able to get that, you know, material, you know, from Russia, get natural gas and other things to lower prices. But there's also no exact correlation with that stuff. Like U.S. is world oil producer now, surpassing Saudi Arabia, everybody else, right? Yep. And yet they sell a lot of that stuff on the, you know, to other countries to make more money. So the oil prices here don't necessarily go down. What makes them fluctuate is a longer discussion, and I'm no expert on that, but it's not necessarily how much they're pumping out of the ground. So increasing natural gas in the market could end up, you know, in the so-called, you know, supposedly burgeoning Indian economy, China, who knows where it might end up. It might not come here. So, yeah, it's where the direct, like, motivation comes from, the direct material interest in what the Trump regime does is a little bit hard to predict. Sorry if I'm a little repetitive with that point. And that's one reason the bourgeois hates him, or a big chunk of it, not all of them, but a lot of the capitalists don't like him, although they'll accommodate to him, because he's unpredictable. That regime is unpredictable. It's not just him. Like that thing today was Zelensky. What's his initials?
J.D. Vance, that weirdo. Yeah, the guy that wants the alternative for Germany party to win. Yeah, that psycho.
The fake hillbilly. He's like,
Yep.
He upped the pressure in the room. He like blew that meeting up. It was pretty interesting. And you know, he's young by their standards, so he's even more unpredictable. But he blew that up, and that's a metaphor for like what could go wrong with trying to predict Trump's motivations. And I'm not a big one on individual psychology and all that for leaders. I think Trump is acting in certain paradigm with certain constraints and all that, just like the rest of them. But they're trying to do all this stuff really fast. You know, they're trying to get a lot done from their point of view. The new boss, same as the old boss to a certain extent, but a new boss with a new style. You know, and that's unsettling to a lot of people. And so I think it will settle down, not necessarily in terms of the frenetic pace and all that, but in terms of the old goals of U.S. imperialism, keep that oil under wraps in the Middle East through the proxies of the Israeli state and so on. That's not going to fundamentally change, but it's still a volatile situation, you know? So I don't know about the direct, like, well, I'm just sort of repeating it from another angle. The direct motivation for Trump as peacemaker is very suspect and short-lived.
I would agree.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm not saying anyone disagrees with that, but it's like we're seeing it play out in real time, and it's like people like I think Aaron was saying earlier, people at work ask you questions. They ask me questions too, and I don't always have answers. Like, why is Trump such a whatever? Well, let's take a few minutes and talk about that.
Yeah, I know. I mean, the thing is, the
I
point
think
that
Trump's
was
personality does have a lot. I think Trump's personality does have a lot to do with this, in the way he's interacting with Zelensky, and the way he's interacting with Putin. Trump likes to be perceived as a winner, and I think he's, Russia has struggled in this war with regards to the widespread perception of how the war is going. There was that initial counteroffensive by Ukraine, which gave rise to a lot of the Russia will collapse in a month or whatever. When that didn't happen, I think a lot of us who are paying attention to the developments on the ground kind of understood that that Russia was going to win this war no matter what. And now that wisdom has kind of percolated back up the chain of command, and now the writing is on the wall that Ukraine is not going to win this. Given $100 billion, given another 6 years, whatever you want to give them, it's they're really struggling now. So I think Trump wants to unhitch himself from the loser Zelensky and hitch himself to the winner Putin. I don't think that there's much beyond that. I don't think in terms of what is Trump doing. I think he wants to move away from Zelensky and be perceived as the winner. If that's from a peace deal, if it's from making money from Russia, whatever it is, Trump wants to be the winner.
No, that's a fair way to put it, I think, too, because there is that individual psychology as well. And as far as Trump's concerned, the reason why some capitalists don't like him is that capitalism requires stability. They need a stable hand to do it. And, like I said, what Jeff said, if it was a deal, now there's not a deal. There's going to be tariffs. There's not going to be tariffs. There's tariffs here, but okay, they're going to be tariffs, but they're going to be negotiated. Oh, no, never mind. They're going to negotiate anyway. And now that aluminum, in my local newspaper I was reading, I deliver it. I don't read, but at the post office, but they're talking about like there's a small brewery, it's kind of in the area, but they do aluminum cans for their beer. And they're worried how that's going to affect them. And you can't be changing, and Aaron and I know with you in Canada, the aluminum industry is pretty big. And that can, obviously the big fish eats the little fish under capitalism. And America could really, how bad is there a big fear of the aluminum tariffs with Trump? Is that can that really screw over large sections of Canadian economy? Or is that?
Yeah. I live in Hamilton. It's a steel town. And our biggest client is the U.S., and a tariff increase would massively hit this city very hard.
Yeah, great. See? So, that's the whole thing. So, yeah. That's the whole instability of him, because he doesn't, it's just zigzagging left and right. We're going to do this. We're not going, I don't see, I don't know how that's going, but, yeah,
it's going great from a position of strength.
Right.
So it's going great. Check out how he talks to Zelensky here. This was just this morning.
Oh, God.
This was actually kind of funny.
The opposition in October offer some words of appreciation to the United States of America and the president who's trying to save your.
So that's JD Vance talking, asking Zelensky after he had already thanked them multiple times for the aid.
Okay.
JD Vance is like, when are you going to thank us for everything we've done for you?
Please, you think that if you will speak very loudly about the war in
He's not speaking loudly. He's not speaking loudly. Your country is in big trouble.
Can I answer?
No, you've done a lot of talking. Your country is in big trouble.
I know.
You're not winning. You're not winning this. You have a damn good chance of coming out okay because of us.
Mr. President, we are staying in our country, staying strong from the very beginning of the war. We've been alone, and we are thankful. I said thanks in this cabinet, and not only in this cabinet.
We gave you, through this stupid president, $350 billion. We gave you military equipment, and you men are brave, but they had to use our military.
What about
if you didn't have our military equipment, this war would have been over in 2 weeks.
In 3 days, I heard it from Putin. In 3 days, This is something
Maybe
new
less.
in 2 weeks. Of course he has.
It's going to be a very hard thing to do business like this.
Again,
I tell you.
just say thank you.
I said a lot of times
accept
to American people.
Accept
Said
that
a
there
lot
are
of times.
disagreements, and let's go litigate those disagreements rather than trying to fight it out in the American media when you're wrong. We know that you're wrong.
But you see, I think it's good for the American people to see what's going on.
I understand, sir.
I think it's
I
very
understand.
important. That's why I kept this story so long. You have to be thankful. You don't have the
I'm
cards.
thankful.
You're buried there. Your people are dying.
tell you
You're
again,
running
I
low
know.
on soldiers.
Don't
Listen,
please,
you're running
Mr.
low
Brad.
on soldiers. It would be a damn good thing.
Mr.
And
Brad.
then you tell us, I don't want a ceasefire. I don't want a ceasefire. I want to go, and I want this. Look, if you could get a ceasefire right now, I tell you, you take it so the bullets stop flying and your men stop getting
Of
killed.
course we want to stop the war.
But you're saying you don't want a
But I said
ceasefire?
to you,
I want a
with
ceasefire.
guarantees.
Because you get a ceasefire faster than
Look at
anything
her.
else.
Ask our people about
Yeah.
ceasefire, what they think.
I'm
upset.
cringing
That
That's
wasn't
too.
with
meant
me.
for you what-
That
what
wasn't
this
with me.
means. It
That was
wasn't
with
with you.
a guy named Biden who was not a smart person. That was
your,
with, that
this
was
is
with
your
Obama.
president. It was your president.
Excuse me. That was with Obama, who gave you sheets, and I gave you javelins.
You ever been to a dinner party and the married couple that invited you are
Yes.
actually having like
Yeah. I get the same vibe of
Very-
like, it's a
very-
train wreck syndrome. Like, you don't want to
very
look, but you want to keep
passive-aggressive-
looking.
Very
Oh,
passive
boy.
aggressive conversation they have.
Wow.
It just turns
that
into a yelling
was-
match.
that
It's
is-
very
that-
uncomfortable.
Oh, wow. Okay.
This
Awkward.
is the breaking of the stallion, I think, where
Yeah.
you have Zelensky, has he's spent the past 3 years being the the war leader, right, the war president of Ukraine, and has been entirely dependent on Western help, and I think he is feeling the squeeze. He realizes that if the U.S. cuts off aid completely, he's
They're
done
screwed.
for.
Right.
So, he's now at a position where his back is against the wall and he's got literally no other options than to be belligerent and to try to, after the recent summit in was it Brussels, I think, Zelensky made another tour of Europe trying to get more leaders of the EU to stay with him. But I mean, it's pretty clear that the United States has supplied the bulk of the help, and without it, he's done. Either he gets capitulated by Russia, in which case he's out, or he negotiates with Russia, in which case his political backers in the country are likely to kill him.
Right. I believe that too. Yes. Yep. I
I think
think
the
Azov is going to murder him. Like, I really think like they're going to take him out. I sincerely believe that too if he does it. So like,
yeah, I don't know. I think the funny option
what-
would be Zelensky just offers 500 billion in minerals rights to Russia. Just out of spite.
Right. And that deal here, most of that stuff is already in Russia anyway. Like, they've already kind of lost most of it. So that's their leverage. But holy God. One thing too, another place in the article here, got a couple more, then we can probably move on because we've recorded. I mean, this is 2 episodes. Why am I sounding like we're doing one long day? And this is it. While Trump is talking about lifting sanctions on Russia, he hasn't dropped his threat of tariffs on Europe. Without the Americans, the Russians are now the big military power on the edge of Europe, and they too will extract a price for that. These little countries will be picked off by the big powers, by the U.S., by China, and Russia. The rise of these parties is, and then this whole thing about the right wing. The rise of these parties on the right is no more a symptom of a shift to the right in society. It is an expression of enormous moods of anger building up in society against the whole ruling class and establishment. The absence of a left alternative, or rather an utter betrayals of the left, who have tied themselves to the liberals since 2008, have made this possible. But this will prepare the ground for new, even sharper swings to the left across the continent, and for revolutionary explosions that will shake the foundations of capitalism in Europe, foundations that are cracking and splintering as we speak. Sorry, that's my dog barking, literally. Sorry about that. But I think that's the whole thing. I just want to kind of close for my piece on here is that on the organized, the mass socialist, the mass communist parties really did do a good job in Europe to stop this. They didn't provide an anti-war movement. If anything, they were cheering on the war for Ukraine. We call them the blue and white tankies, the NATO tankies, especially in DSA, who wanted to arm the Azov battalion, and like they messed up. And the far right weirdly got the whole thing of like, we're against this war. This is the bad thing. We're not going to arm any. Like they got that whole thing, and that's how Trump got that false reputation of being anti-war for this shit. And it's just, this is bad. So that's my thoughts.
That's a complete lie. Trump just signed off on $2 billion more in aid to Israel. So like anyone that's literally just like an hour ago. Like anyone who believes that Donald Trump is like, an anti-imperialist is completely fucking deluding themselves.
Exactly.
But what he's got is the optics of a win, though.
Yes, he does.
That's all
that matters. He gets into office. He gets into office. Netanyahu immediately backs off. Does the ceasefire. It's been, a month, and he's at the table with Putin, or close to that. So, this is red meat for his base. Look at Trump winning.
Oh, look, Putin's against the woke, and that, like, it's this weird thing. They're like, oh, Putin's against the woke and everything. So that's why, like, they're oddly liking Putin for this stuff now, and it's just triggering the libs. I think that's a whole basis for some of the Trump people. But yeah, that's it. It's all about like I said, appearances matter more. He's good at, appearances, not substance. But wow, that was
the actual
very
what
uncomfortable
the actual fallout
meeting.
from these deals doesn't matter. It's the initial optics of a win.
Right. And that's it. And I think he's just, obviously, yeah, they can go after him now. Oh, well, you're right. I mean, he said you're losing the war. I mean, he was right. You've lost, like, yeah. I mean, finally someone said it. And in a way, I do feel like, and nothing against the bravery of the Russian soldier and the Ukrainian soldier, and like I get it. Like, it's nothing. They didn't put you there. Capitalists and businessmen put them on the battlefield to go kill each other. That's who put you there, to fight for land. Now you know what you've been fighting for. Mineral rights. That's what they're really after. That's it.
Within the context of Ukraine, remember Zelensky was supposedly against a war, kind of pro-Russian.
He was the peace candidate.
Yeah, within the context of Ukraine, things have moved very rapidly. From our point of view, not so much, right? It's always been a mess, that kind of thing, from the sort of the average level of thinking about Ukraine in the US. But things are moving rapidly for people there. They're unsettled, and you can live in part of the country without feeling the direct effects of the war in a huge way. And it's just very attractive to try to just escape from it, because what's the motivation for Ukraine long term, right? For the average person, the average soldier, what's the end game? I think it's dawning on I think a lot of people knew this already, that they're not going to win this. You know what I mean? So how does it end? And I think people are looking for an end, and Zelensky's kind of behind that curve, and that's a big problem for him and the Azov battalion and the rest of them that want to go, keep going. But also, I wonder about, this is maybe a longer thing. I'll just throw it out there. I wonder where the motivation comes for the average Russian troop, average Russian soldier. And I think part of it is, besides the usual nationalism and everything, the brainwashing and all that, I think part of it is that analogy however trite it seems, like, well, what if the Chinese had a military base in Mexico or wherever, well, I don't think it's a really tough selling point to say to the Russians, the Russian youth and so on, hey, look, they've encircled our country. What are we going to do about it?
Right.
Right. Even with all
pushing forward since 1991. I mean, the NATO doesn't really have a thing to exist. It was supposed to contain the Soviet. Well, why are you still around? Why are you bombing Libya?
Yeah. The Baltic countries are, in NATO since I forget when. I mean, it's the encirclement argument is easy to understand, and that's an abstract argument until a war starts. And then Ukraine goes into part of Russia. So what the Ukrainian army? So I don't think it's a tough sell right now. I would bet the motivation of the Russian troops has turned around somewhat. And I'm not cheering that on, you know what I mean? Right. But I'm just saying, what's the reality? They don't have a tough sell right now. Well, again, like with the Middle East, like with Palestine and so on, what's going to happen in the next breath is another question, even after a peace deal or whatever, if that happens. But right now, the momentum isn't just military from Russia being, spending all that. There was a lot of good stats about what they can spend on the war and so on, and the collateral. That was the right word. The little boost they get out of it. But there's also kind of a thing of just hey, our back's up against the wall, and they're coming after us too. The minute they started launching missiles into Russia, invading that little part of Russia, that was a turning point that didn't get much press here. I mean, at first it did. It was like, oh, wow, that happened. But on the ground, that had an electric effect within the country, among sections of the population.
An extremely dangerous escalation.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All
and
right.
a big part of Putin's popularity is his perception as a strongman against the West.
Yeah.
He's been playing this image, since he not since he first got into office, but after being soundly rejected by his overtures towards the West, I think he's at a position now where he is able to leverage the West's antipathy towards Russia into popularity for him. If you look at, this war, if you look at the sanctions, if you look at all the things adversely affecting the average Russian's life at this point, a lot of them can be tied back or traced, directly or indirectly to policies of the West. So as long as the West is a bad guy, Putin will remain popular, and so will his military. So will his military adventures. I think it's important to remember that the Balkanization and imperial colonization of Russia has been a goal of the West for a really long time. I don't know if you'll recall this. The first Secretary General of NATO, Lord Ismay, he said that the purpose of NATO, it was created to keep the Soviet Union out, the Americans in, and the Germans down. And
Wow.
if you look at the past couple of years, NATO has been executing this to a T. By leveraging the EU against Russia, they have torpedoed Germany's economy. They've kept Russia out of the affairs of Western Europe, and they've kept the Americans squarely in control of the whole thing.
All right. Yeah. So sorry, I got something going on, but here, yeah. So I think the article, I think in the end, I'll just close on this too, is that what happened is outside of our realm. Us on the left here, but I just think that this is what the absence of any real anti-war movement. I mean, there really wasn't really an anti-war movement. It was a pro-war movement really throughout this. There wasn't stop the war and yeah. I mean, this was a civil war that started in 2014. It's come as a surprise to a very uninformed public, in my view, that they didn't know what was going on and who's going to make money off of this whole conflict. But yeah, I don't know. I wish I could close it better, but this is just gonna. Unfortunately, this is just gonna end poorly because there's not going to be any help for the Ukrainian people. They're, like I said, 25% cut in their GDP. 1 trillion to rebuild. That's not going to be fixed anytime soon. I think the estimate is 700,000 people are dead. They died in this war. Like, they're not coming. Like, this is a generation of Ukrainian young people killed off by this war, displaced. That's the end of the thing. Like, yeah, okay, Trump can wave a high five and say, but like, this is it. I don't know. I just wish I could end on a better note here, but yeah. So unless anyone's got some more other closing thoughts on this, but it's a tragedy, really. No one.
I have one soundbite. Remember World War I. I think a lot of the left forgot the lessons of World War I, supporting one imperialist, one colonial regime against another. And also, it's a hard argument to make Russia as that imperialist right now with the encirclement and so on. And I'm not at all pro Putin, pro Russian regime at all. And I agree with what you were just saying, Chris. It's actually things are going to turn a different way. But after this, there won't be stability and so on with the conditions that come out of the effects of the war. But in terms of how people responded, like the lack of an anti-war movement and so on, I felt like a lot of the left forgot about World War I. It didn't help conservative elements of the Socialist Party here or wherever supporting the bourgeois during World War I that helped destroy the Socialist Party, and et cetera. So yeah, it's we're paying a cost for the left being weakened through other things leading up to this, and there's going to be more wars like this, unfortunately, before a movement gets off the ground that can stop them through real, international solidarity and international socialism. That wasn't a factor, unfortunately, in this war.
I think you make a really good point about World War I. People need to study that a lot more
Yeah.
closely, because I think that more resembles the conditions that we're seeing now, is, the collapse and fall of one imperialist hegemony and the rise of, competing imperialist powers across the planet. Fascism gets tossed around. Anyone I don't like is a fascist. Trump is a fascist. Putin's a fascist. There's fascists in Ukraine. And it's important to actually study, and that's why we have reading groups, and we need to study these phenomenon to see where they're going, and then because that affects how we organize, right? If fascism really did come to America, we'd all be underground right now. But we still have open elections in theory, I guess. I don't know. I think maybe that's a debate for another time. We had one episode, is Trump fascist? But I think I'm still on the fence if I'm 100% conclusive either way. The fact that undocumented immigrants and their children basically have to hide underground. There's community defenses being organized to defend them against ICE like this. There are, just because socialists and communist trade unionists aren't the ones hiding underground doesn't mean there aren't people that have to be forced into hiding from a very authoritarian and horrible government. So I don't know. I think maybe there's some nuance there to kind of re-explore what fascism is and how to fight it. I'm certainly open to those ideas. I'm far from an expert on it, but I think that's something that we as the left should be doing, is carefully analyzing our current situation. And again, as always, is to remind ourselves that the main enemy is at home. There's nothing I can do about the war in Ukraine except fight back against my own government supporting unlimited and blank checks to genocidal regimes.
Yeah.
Jeff, I think you are correct in saying that that this is not going to be the end of the entanglement with Russia. I think that this peace is going to be, if we do achieve peace, it's going to be short lived, because the new SecDef Pete Hegseth has given some of his statements in Brussels. He makes it sound like doesn't sound like he's actually agitating for increased defense spending amongst the NATO countries. I have the transcript here of what he said, and he wants the EU countries to spend more like 5% of their GDP on military, increases. So I think it would be folly to assume that this would be the end of it. Whatever remains of Ukraine after the treaty is signed or whatever, I think is going to be a continued hotbed for EU intervention, possibly continuing Ukrainian right-wing terrorism, and certainly, possibly more Russian military intervention. The purpose of this peace, I think, in the large scale, is to turn the United States' resources towards China.
Right.
The more pressing, geopolitical issue. I think I've read that China is going to surpass the United States in terms of a number of different measures, but as the most important economy in the world by 2030 or so. That gives them 5 years to stop this economic juggernaut of China. So they're going to have to pull all the resources out of Ukraine to be able to do this effectively.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right. So I will think I gotta get up at 4:30 to I gotta go to Baltimore. I gotta take a train ride. So we could go on about this, but hopefully Jeff and Devin, you can come back on and talk more about horrible things going on in the world, about war and everything. But it was great. Thank you for being on here. We appreciate your time. That was great. We got a lot to talk about. Thank you, everyone. On the Twitch stream. Thank you very much as well. If you want to follow us, we are on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, YouTube.
Follow us on YouTube. Help us out.
Please, subscribe on YouTube. We need that so we can do a live stream. So please do that as well. We're on MySpace. We're on LiveJournal. We're starting a Telegram service. Whatever form of media you get it on, we will do it. I've learned Morse code this weekend, so we can just do this all out in dots and dashes. So thank you very much. Thank you once again, Jeffrey and Devin, for being here. And by the way, Jeffrey, I stole your outro and I never give you credit, but I use the Keep up the fight, keep up the struggle. That is from Jeff, not me.
Oh.
I'm sorry. I
Okay.
don't want to get caught red-handed, but I've been using it in everything because it's a great way to end a thing. So thank you, Jeffrey. It's appreciated.
Okay.
All right, man. Take it easy. All right. And I'll talk to all of you all tomorrow in one way or another. So,
Okay,
all right,
and-
everyone. Thanks a lot. We'll see you
Take care.
around.